Hi there. Welcome to Turning Point. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun Financial Modeling Software, where we help the office of the CFO leave spreadsheets behind and model anything from cash flow through to complex scenarios with clarity and control. And joining me today is Kirstin Carey, owner of Evolve Sales Consulting and a longtime entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Kirstin.
Oh, thanks, Blaine. I'm happy to be here.
So I always love to kick it off and hear about you and where you got started as an entrepreneur. When was the first sort of time you thought, hey, I might want to dive in and do my own thing?
I was still in my dorm room in college, and I got the opportunity to do some, well, now they call it side hustle, but some side hustle work, doing some marketing for a guy I knew in college who was selling t-shirts. And so I started helping him market, and I was like, this is fun. And then I decided to switch my degree over to communications with a minor in business. And I was like, what? They're going to give me a degree in this? This is the fun stuff. So I was off and running from that point.
Oh, that's I was a designer in college, and I started a design company, had a creative agency for over a decade, and grew it, and everything got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I wish I had had at least a single business course, because I had to learn everything the school of hard knocks and
Yeah, but what they teach you in school about business versus what reality of business is, that's not always the same thing. But the classes on persuasion and the classes on the psychology classes around business, that was fascinating to me. Why people make the decisions the way they do. I became really good at sales really early on because I understood how to ask questions to get to why somebody was doing something, which is, underneath the things that they're typically saying. So I just thought that was so amazing, and I got very obsessed with that. So most of the books that are hanging around in my office are typically psychology of sales, the energy around why people make decisions the way they do, or health. That's pretty much my reading.
Yeah, it's like probably the most important skill that you develop as an entrepreneur is sales, and you have to learn it faster. You don't survive. And it was something like I never sort of fancied myself a salesperson there, but then obviously got decent at it because we survived, and we grew, and we sold a lot. So hugely valuable skill, but again, it was a little bit of off the cuff learning for me. So when you graduated college, like, where did you go? What was your, how did you get started?
I interned with a woman who at the time had a really large, well-known training company. And that seemed like so much fun to me too. So I got to intern with her before I graduated and got to see inside that world. And then I got introduced into the world of professional speaking. And I got right into the National Speakers Association. I actually became one of the youngest national board members they ever had, and one of the youngest people they ever had that got a certified speaking professional designation, which is a big deal within the organization. It's a 5-year process. It's a big thing. But I got to hobnob and rub shoulders with people who got paid lots of money to be keynoters and consultants. And I got to see how they were really making money and where the cash actually was coming from. And a lot of them weren't making all their money off the platform. They were making it in the back end sales. So this is going to date me, but I had, the big clamshells with the DVDs in them and my books and all the things that I would schlep with me to all the events because there was no digital anything at that point. And I got published right away with some books. And I made most of my money on that back of the room sale type of thing. So I would get in front of whatever audience they would have me, as long as they were that entrepreneurial audience that I tended to do well with buying additional products. So, my friends could make $10, $15, $20, $30,000 from the platform. I was making $5,000 or $10,000 from the platform and then selling back end 30, 40, or 50,000. Okay. So it got really interesting because to me, that was an easier way to make money than just now we've spoken, that organization's not bringing you back most of the time for another couple of years, if ever, if you've done the keynote. But I saw that recurring money and I was like, this is way easier and this is much more fun and much more exposure, frankly.
And so what was what was that topic? Like, it was a sort of sales persuasion side. Like, what were you keynoting in? What were the things that people really wanted to hear?
It was really understanding sales and marketing, but from the communication side. So I would get high level consulting gigs for people at like Verizon, UPS, Aramark was a big client for me, which is really big on the East Coast here in the United States. And they were companies who wanted their upper leaders to be more effective from the platform selling their concepts or their ideas internally a lot of the times. So it became a different kind of sales. You were selling an idea that was going to change the direction of a company. So I would work with some of their highest level people at these Fortune 500 companies, and they pay me a bunch of money. So it was more, they were calling it presentation skills, but what they really wanted was high level persuasion and sales skills. So I got to do that too, and got to see how you could become a line item at a high level company where they would just keep paying you every year. It got easier and easier. And the first time I remember going in for a conversation with one of the CEOs at one of the divisions, so they could have multiple CEOs within a company, and they had brought me in to work with some of their higher level leaders, and they were really happy about it. And the second year, and I went in for the conversation, and they were like, "Well, we were so happy, we're just putting you on, and we're going to do it this way. Can we pay you in full for the whole year?" And I was like, "Sure." No, you can't give me all the money now. I was like, all right, I'll take it. And then the third year, they didn't even want to have the conversation. They said, "Oh, you're just a line item now." And they barely ever called me sometimes. But the idea was once they had their budget, if they took something away, they would lose that in their budget. So they kept me a lot of the times because they loved having me on call. And for the amount of money they were paying me, and I was 25 years old, it was like, wow, this is magic. And then I really got to see the inside of companies and how they worked. And then I also was working as well with small business owners on their marketing and their sales to help them get into corporate. So I was selling still for me, and then also teaching people how to do that as well.
Yeah. And it's a really valuable skill, especially to get into enterprise sale. Of course, like when I started my agency, we started out small business like everybody else. Well, hey, we're going to do design stuff for small business.
Yeah.
And found out really quick, like that is the hardest way to make $1. And it can be hard. As much as we love those small businesses, it just got too hard to be able to try and grow a business that way. And as we started to move up market and move into some enterprise sized businesses and government, we did a ton of government work, which is,
that's a hard rule. Oh, wow. That's a hard road. I've done some of those contracts too. By the time you get through all the paperwork, it's like, is this even worth it?
Yeah, it was, I would say the first few were the hardest. And then once we kind of knew the ropes and we knew what to do and we had all the contacts and everything, it was very, very much like an enterprise sale. It's like you just kind of had to get through the, oh man, like the red tape and
the
all
nonsense.
the nonsense. Exactly.
Yeah.
We got through that. And then it just sort of got into the flow and everything was kind of boilerplate and our name was passed along. And all of a sudden we're looking.
Because you were approved at that point. I'm not sure if it works like that in Canada, but yeah, you got the approval. Now you were like, oh, you were easier to work with.
Exactly. We got the approval. Not long into that, we basically said no RFPs. If they want us, they're just going to hire us.
Yeah, you're just paying us. Yeah.
Smart. And that also smoothed everything out. And then and as we started to get into some of the large corporations, they were closer to government than we thought. Like for the red tape and nonsense that they have. But we kind of knew how to do it then, right? And so you just kind of there you go. And as long as they have their budget and they would be, like you said, like the line items. They don't want to they use it or lose it. So we could always tell when we were getting close to the end of the fiscal year, because we would get ridiculous phone calls of, "Can you do this in the next 2 months?" And it's like a 6-month project. No, call us next year and we'll do it right.
Yeah.
Just it's a different way of doing it, but it's so critical because it is so much more reliable. The dollars are higher. And it's not their money. Like with a small business owner, it's their money, and it makes it a real challenge. And so in a lot of ways, those are some really good foundational type of clients to have, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, some of the small businesses, the thing I appreciate working with them is that they can make decisions faster and they can get to money faster a lot of the times, as long as they believe that the project or the process will work for them. So, I just have a love for entrepreneurs because I am one and I've always been one. I think I came out of the gate as one. So I identify with who they are and understand, I think, some of the struggles a little bit more. So you kind of have your people that way. But I grew up in a household where my dad was Social Security Administration, high level, pretty much my whole childhood, all the way up until I became an adult. And so hearing him talk about working for the government and what it was like. So I think I understood through him that was not a lot of the direction I wanted to be, was that standard 9 to 5.
Oh yeah.
which is never going to work for me.
I don't know if any of us are like once you have that freedom, you can never go back. Like I'm completely unemployable today.
Yeah.
There's
Oh my
just
God.
no
I
way.
say the same thing. I'm not employable. I think that's half the issue, right? Unless it's an open company that would have a very specific autonomy driven where they just let me do my thing and then I can be,
Yeah.
which sometimes I feel that that's how it works with my clients. Like I come in as like a fractional CSO for them sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's a similar partnership kind of thing, but it depends. But more companies are starting to think that way. So I
Yeah.
haven't completely written myself off, but I feel like we're entrepreneurs. We're kind of the people who are willing to work 80 hours to avoid 40.
Yeah, generally, except I get to pick which 80,
Yeah.
and you never leave the office. Like in
Yeah.
your head, it never leaves you,
Oh,
right? And
yeah, that's a little bit of
except
an
that it's
issue.
stuff that I care about, I suppose. But
Yeah, and I
it's
enjoy it.
yeah, exactly. And like I remember when we were doing work for like we would go into these government departments and we would walk out and just be like, oh my God, it could never work there. We did some really fun projects. Like we did some really cool stuff. But when we would go in to meet with the management team and everything, and it was just like, oh my God, I couldn't stay here. Like how it was so foreign to me. And,
I get
but
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but but that's, you have to go where the opportunity is and where the fit is, right? Like we just found that's where we fit with the product we were doing. It was too big and too sophisticated, and that a lot of times for small business, like the stuff we
Right.
were good at was just a bigger sort of thing. Right. And,
Mm-hmm.
so after that experience, like what did you do next? Like where did you start to go? Okay. Now what's my next sort of endeavor?
That's a great question. The universe kind of sometimes 2x4s you to the back of the head when it wants you to go a different direction than you are. And in my 30s, so that was when I was, my 20s. So for 15 years, I was doing that. And in my 30s, I was just really tired all the time. And I was traveling a lot, speaking a lot at conferences. And I woke up in a hotel room one night and I didn't know where I was. I didn't even know like which side of the bed to try to get off to go to the bathroom. Like it was one of those, I had been doing too much for too long and sleeping out of a suitcase basically. So it hit me like a ton of bricks. There was still something more to that. So I started kind of going down the route of let's do some blood testing. Let's look around. And I'd always been generally healthy. I was an athlete. I was a gymnast. I had, all the things. And I hadn't noticed I was putting on weight. And there was a couple of other kind of signs. And I finally got diagnosed with celiac disease, which is an autoimmune condition, and Hashimoto's, which is thyroid autoimmune. And I was like, what is this? So I tried to start learning how to, what to do about it. But the doctors were like, well, just take these pills and you're kind of in this for the rest of your life. And I'm like, that can't be true. So then I went natural medicine. And I still wasn't really getting the kind of healing reversal that I thought I should be able to do because I'm in my 30s. We should be able to do this. And so I went back to school and I opened a bunch of restaurants because I thought that would be brilliant as being exhausted as I was. I'd opened some restaurants. They were the first gluten-free restaurants in Arizona.
Okay.
And I opened 3 of them over the course of 10 years. And I built out wellness centers. And what we would do is we would do food sensitivity testing for people. We would figure out what they could and couldn't eat. I got 3 years, I did a nutrition program. So I'm a holistic nutritionist certified. And we would build out the meal plans for them, but then we would literally make them for them. And people would pick up these customized meal plans. So I turned the restaurant industry kind of on its ear because the times we were dead is when my staff would be making all these meals for people and they would prepay, which is not how restaurants usually work. Right. Yeah. So then I started having this income stream that was very different than the standard restaurant. We would bring in speakers. I would speak myself on nutrition and wellness and health. And then I started getting people hiring me more and more to do wellness and health. And then my now husband also came to work for me and he went back to school and got board certified holistic nutrition. But we started doing lab work for people. Like we're certified to the hilt of all the things we can do right up to where like a naturopath would be. So we can still do the labs. I just can't diagnose and I just can't prescribe, which nobody was looking for a script at that point. And we built out this whole company. And then I realized over time, it was the wellness piece I loved. So after 10 years, I closed down the restaurants and the brick and mortar, and we went online in 2017 with a full-on high-ticket wellness program to reverse autoimmune and other related conditions.
Okay.
And I did that for 15 years. But selling that was probably the hardest thing I ever did, because a lot of the people that were attracted to what we were doing were people who'd been there, done that. They'd already dug into their pocket 10, 20, $50,000 worth of money, and things didn't work for them till they got to us. And it's hard when people are used to having their wellness paid for. I mean, in Canada, you could have even more paid for than we're used to. And now you're being asked to dig into your pocket and you feel like nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I mean, I have people showing up on calls sometimes that were literally in bed, like trying not to die today. Like I literally had people saying, my biggest goal is to not die this year. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be a fun call. So it was a very different sales conversation. It was coming from a very different place. It was way coming from a place of fear. So I really learned what selling really looked like and how to also help people come to a no, this isn't the right thing for you right now, and celebrate that too. Because they just weren't there. They weren't in a space where they could get up over on even the emotional attachment to who they were as a sick person. And so I wanted so badly to help them because I know what it looks like on the other side. But I also had to really learn that I couldn't carry them over that line. I had to just be there to hold space if they weren't able to get to that line to even want to get that far over it. So that was a huge learning curve for me from a sales perspective. But the whole time I had that business, I still had business owners coming to me saying, how are you making money in this industry? It's very hard. And so I always took on like 5 to 10 people a year, the entrepreneurs that I would mentor. So I still kind of had like my little side hustle of I was in business and sales and marketing for people, out of the idea of we can help more people learn to be better at the business thing. We could help more people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my big goal of helping to kind of heal the world got satisfied if I was also helping entrepreneurs continue to do better as business owners. So about a year ago, I decided, it was probably 2 years ago when I really knew that really was the calling I wanted to come back into officially and not do it just this little side hustle. And so I started weaning down from the wellness piece and started handing clients off to other people who I had mentored or helped along the way. And we officially closed those doors. Actually, technically, I guess it's literally tomorrow will be the official close of the doors because I had a couple contracts with clients that I still needed to honor. But really, by the end of last year, we were done with the wellness piece.
So I want to circle back a little bit here because it's interesting that you jumped in, you went basically, like you said, 3 restaurants, you rolled up this wellness business, and I want to dig into a little bit of that because obviously there's a lot of learnings from then till now, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about, like, you saw the need for obviously gluten-free restaurants, which I imagine are more common now. I think there's probably more options than there used to be.
Yeah.
So you saw that problem, but how did you jump in? I'm just really curious. Like I have friends that are in the restaurant business, and it does not seem like it's for the faint of heart. So I'm curious how you actually got something like that off the ground, like not coming from sort of a restaurant background, but more from a solution approach, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of what my own healings, kind of started with was what I believed was the tangible, I can do something about this right now. I hadn't even gotten into how much of the emotional healing piece needed to happen. But I'm very like, hit the ground running, keep going, get me something tangible so I can work on a very doer, action-oriented kind of girl. And I started learning about food in a way that no one had ever talked to me. I grew up in Philadelphia. We had cheesesteaks and soft pretzels and all the gluten in the world. And there was a lot of autoimmune in my family that wasn't talked about or identified as autoimmune at the time. So I started seeing how much of the way we ate, and it wasn't like an unhealthy, we weren't at McDonald's every night, but it was more of this unhealthy leaning on the glutens and the breads and a lot of heavy dairy and things like that, that really leaned me more to having more issues with autoimmune and a family kind of predisposition to it. Mm-hmm. So I started learning about food in a whole different way because I thought I was eating whole wheat pasta and low fat dairy. And I thought it was super healthy because that's how I had to eat as an athlete. Then I realized I was contributing to so much. So I started learning so much about the food stuff that I was like, more people should know this. And that's kind of how I always end up in the next whatever venture I'm in is, I can't believe I didn't know this before. No one else around me seems to know this. Let me start something to teach people. and like hand off the wealth of knowledge so I can then move on to the next thing. And that's where the restaurants came in, because it was nearly impossible to eat. So I would go to restaurants, and we used to joke about how I was the freak at the table because I was asking 6,800 questions. I was the Harry Met Sally energy of, I need this on the side, and can you tell me, is this with this, and is it hot or cold? And it wasn't even just, I was being, a pain in the neck about it. I literally could get sick if I ate some of this stuff. So when I asked questions, I needed actual answers. I had a chef come to the table one time at a restaurant I was at, and I asked him, is this thing gluten-free? The way it's worded on the menu, it says it's gluten-free, but it's curious just the way that the ingredients are. And he said, well, I'm 95% sure it's gluten-free.
Oh boy.
And I said, so you're 5% sure that I'm going to get sick tonight? And he was like I was the ass in this conversation. And I said, how can you be the executive chef and not know what's in your food?
Yeah.
And I was still being the difficult customer. I could see it all over him, right? And this was in Vegas at the time, where they're very accommodating for a lot of restaurants now. And I remember being like, okay, this has to change. So how do I change it? I go do it, and I show you how it should be done. And I built a really amazing organization with a lot of amazing people who came in and learned alongside of me, because there wasn't even equipment to do some of the stuff that we were doing. There wasn't ingredients that you could get to easily to do a lot of the stuff we were doing. So we were making stuff from a scratch level that I can't, like we were making our own flour from scratch from non-glutinous origination in the kitchen, because we didn't have an option at the time to do anything else. That's how long ago this was. So I learned at a whole different level, but a lot of the times I didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't know how hard it was going to be. And I think knowing what I know now, had I known how hard some of this would be, I don't know if I would have started, but it was the lesson I needed to receive at the time.
Well, and I just like from my little understanding, I don't know that much about the restaurant industry, just from what I'm told, even with successful restaurants, the margins are so
they're
tight,
absurd.
Which
is why I actually got out, because it was too hard to make the money that I was used to making as a consultant without it being so much harder.
Yeah. And a weight on your shoulders, because you have staff and expenses and leases and everything else, I imagine, right?
I had 28 employees at one point. We had leases that were commercial. We had a partnership with the School of Naturopathic Medicine to be in one of their buildings. So there was all these other agreements that I had to do on top of all that to make certain things for them and make their doctors happy and all the other stuff that we were doing. And it just got to the point where I felt like I was working for everyone but me. Yeah. And the fun was no longer in it. That's when I was like, okay, the universe is telling me. So, I sold off one of the places. One of them, I just, we found another person to come in and kind of run it under a different name, but it was pretty much the same thing. And I just said, hey, this got me to where I'm going to be. I see everything as a bridge to the next piece. Yeah. So it got me into the wellness side and gave me a lot of credibility, frankly, to be able to step in as a practitioner the way that I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I suspect that, like, just in your local area, because nothing was there.
Definitely.
And suddenly you built something that was there, and timing, of course, now it's much more common to get gluten-free, I think, everywhere. Mm-hmm. But I'm assuming some of that is from sort of groundbreakers like you guys that actually went like, okay, this is a problem that's completely underserved. This is an opportunity. But just because it's an opportunity doesn't mean that it's the business cases make sense, right? Like it can be such a challenge anyway. Yeah. So you kind of went, okay, restaurants, okay, that's no longer for us. Let's focus more on the wellness side. Mm-hmm. And but basically at that time, it sounded like you were literally kind of had three businesses going. You're doing consulting here, consulting on the wellness, and also restaurants, which is another thing typical of entrepreneurs. You burn the candle from both ends and right all in the middle as well. And don't even think about it. You just do.
We create new ends to burn from. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So how did you juggle all of that and sort of keep things moving along with all of these different entities that you were working in?
I hired very well. I kind of, again, serendipitous. I ran into somebody when I was thinking about owning the restaurant who was a restaurant consultant who happened to be managing another restaurant one night that I happened to go to. And I was having a conversation with him just as he was waiting on us. And he was a consultant. So he gave me a lot of information that I didn't know. I think going into any venture, knowing that there are things you don't even know you don't know, and that you need outside help to point out the stuff that you don't know is the most important piece of it. Mm-hmm. I then hired really well for my executive chef, and he was with me for all 3 openings. And then we hired from there really smart. And if you've ever seen the show Chopped, where they give them the mystery ingredients. Okay. That's how you had to interview with us. We would give you the opposite. We would say, you can't use gluten, dairy, soy, or peanuts, make us something. And some people would just get frozen and they couldn't do anything. And they would be like, I'm out of here. This is too hard. And that we learned real quick. And then we had the people who are like, all right, let me see what I can do. And I started looking at everything that way. Is I'm not hiring the guy that has all the information coming into the story. I'm hiring the guy that's going to find it. Yeah. Right. And so I don't want to say I got lucky, because I don't think there's luck in anything. I think it's just being really smart to start seeing where you can also improve when it's not going your direction. But I hired really well. And unlike a lot of restaurants, you don't see a lot of people staying over periods of time. I had some people who stayed with me from the first day we opened to the last day we closed. And then they would bring their friends because their friends wanted to work for us. And, we saw there was usually a core of people who never left. So there was always that 1 or 2 people that were always revolving. And then there's always kind of the underling employees in a restaurant setup that it's never going to be a long period of time that they're with you. And that got real hard too, because you're just like, oh. But the core people we had were brilliant, and they were amazing, and they were great to work with.
I'm curious. I just want to sort of divert a little bit here, because it's something that we all run into all the time. What were some of the secrets that you had for finding the right people?
Sometimes it's hard to even know what we were doing right. It was, making sure there was a good connection energetically with those people first, like not having a conversation about their resume, but just having a conversation with them. What have you done? What did you enjoy? Why was that fun for you? Why do you even want to work here? Especially because of the uniqueness of what we were doing. Mm-hmm. The ones that were curious, the ones that were confident, but also weren't cocky to the point where they were going to not take feedback. Someone who can take feedback and turn it into gold is who you really want. Somebody who's open to receive that, but also knows how to stand in their power. That's an amazing quality to have somebody working with you. And also somebody who wasn't trying to take over either. They wanted to be a number 2, right? Or they wanted to just play their position. And that was also brilliant too. It was right when social media was just starting to happen too. So one of my managers got real smart. She would go look people up on Facebook before she would even let me get to their resume. And she was knocking people out just based on the stuff that was just what they would post to the public, how drunk they were this weekend, or how, whatever, silly, weird thing that they were doing. She's like, this guy's never going to show up, or this person, look at this. So we also got smart about using that to our power. And nobody was doing that at the time either. Mm-hmm. But it was also the people who wanted to, they understood the bigger mission. It was about health.
Yeah. And that's, I think as I ask other entrepreneurs, and even look back when I've had, real nice runs of success for a long time, and then all of a sudden just like some failures. Right. And
you have to,
it's so much based on like they always say culture, but it's like understanding the person and what makes them tick. And it's less about like, there's a minimum sort of skill level if you do need a skill on the job or whatever.
Yes.
But then that is just the most basic prereq. But like what you're talking about, that's what I've always kind of been more comfortable doing, is just conversations and digging deep and learning about the person and seeing if they have the same drive and the same energy and appreciation for people and all of that is so important.
The other really big thing I learned, and I had people tell me this, but I hadn't really owned it until I owned the restaurants, because I had people work for me at other companies before that I had. Fire quickly, hire slowly.
Yeah.
So we always had a 30-day period or a 2-week period where it was still a, we're getting to know each other period. We haven't completely decided where we're all going to be married together. We're just dating right now. But the second I felt like it wasn't working, anytime I did not listen to that, or anyone of my team who could also fire, didn't listen to that, after they were gone and we had let them go or they had left, there was always stuff that came out that we were like, come on, how did we not know this before? Team members would be like, well, I didn't want to say anything. And every time we were right. Like, you're never wrong when you have that first flutter of, I probably should let this person go and we should part as friends now.
Yeah.
For them and for you. And so hiring more quickly became a skill that I had to build.
Yeah. It's we've talked about that so many times too. Same thing, like, hire slow, fire fast. But there have been times where we've done the opposite and it's virtually never worked. Like, it just,
you're like, this cost me so much, even just like in lost sleep sometimes. Yeah. Fixing fires that never should have even been, an issue. And so you learn that quicker and you stop being so emotionally attached to it. You're not responsible for these people, though I felt very responsible for some of them. Some of them were really young when they first came to work for me.
Yeah.
Right. So you feel like, this feeling that you have to kind of oversee them. And yes, but at the same time, you're not doing them any favors either by continuing to enable the behavior or continuing to tell them, even energetically, that whatever they're doing is okay. Because I never fired somebody who didn't see it coming. Like, I never let somebody go who was like, wow, I'm shocked. Most of the time they were relieved because they felt and they knew they were in the wrong space, or there was some other reason, right? Mm-hmm. We were downsizing or they saw it coming, or they had another opportunity they wanted to leave for.
Yeah.
And I used to celebrate the hell out of team members when they would find something else, because I felt that was also part of my job, is to help them get as good as they could. And if they maxed out where they were with me, then hallelujah, you have some other place to go to see your brilliance.
Yeah, exactly. The more that you celebrate that, the better, because that, first of all, that's just what you, I think, do as a person, but also you want to build a reputation of this is a good place to work, and they, and they're not trying to keep you a prisoner, or anything.
No.
Like they want you to succeed, right? And that's an important sort of attitude to have, I think, when you're hiring.
I agree.
So you went from so now you've kind of gone, okay, I need to get out of these two, and I'm going to focus on the coaching. I'm going to focus on entrepreneurs. I'm going to focus on this side. Tell me a little bit about that, like how you got to that sort of conclusion, and how that'll start to play out for you.
Like 2 years ago, I mean, if I got real serious, I knew 2.5 years ago that I had gotten to a point where I really felt like I had maxed out the growth I had in the space. And I had hired a bunch of team members underneath me. So they were doing a lot of the one-on-one coaching. My husband was doing all of the lab interpretation, all of that kind of coaching. I was doing more of the high level stuff. And I even built out programs that were like high level. So if you'd been with us for a while and you really wanted to reach kind of the next level of healing, like the physical things are gone, but now you're like, oh, I want to open up to this next level of energetic healing. I was doing even programs that for that, I maxed that out with myself. I mean, like, I got to a point where it was no longer serving me either. I think that started showing up for me, even physically. I started feeling it. And I started not enjoying going into work and doing things anymore. I'd see that, that client that was on your phone that you're like, oh man, like I didn't have that feeling for anyone until a couple of years ago. And I was like, okay, I need to get serious. What do I want to do next? And I tried to pivot the company, but I really just needed the company to finish what it was here for. And there was a point in me, I built this company. We were 7 figures. I had a lot of people working for me. I had done this. What was I going to do with all my clients? I felt so responsible. And I had to work to let that go. Like, I went through a couple of my own journeys and pieces working with outside consultants. I've done psilocybin journeys. I've done the plant medicine journeys. I've even done that, where it came to one day I really saw, I'm like, wow, okay, this is complete. And I am trying to continue to drag it on. And I finally one day just said, I'm done. And it's like everyone kind of knew before I did. Like, there was no one that I was like, we're closing the doors and I'm opening this new thing. Nobody was shocked. Some of them were sad because they're like, we kind of saw this happening. But no one was shocked. They're like, well, okay, good. It's about time you figured it out, Kirstin. So a lot of times it's you're the last one to know, but you're telling people without realizing it.
Yeah.
So I think the entrepreneur needs to listen to themselves a little bit more on what's really still getting them excited about what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't that long ago, a couple of years ago, I read I don't know if it was an article or in a book or something. I can't remember the source anymore, but it was talking about and it was in the context of an entrepreneur, but so when you're trusting your gut, it's actually just pattern recognition.
Yes.
And that was such a, that was like, oh, I trust my gut a lot more now than I used to, because I trusted this, not something flighty. It's like, no, this is based on likely an experience where I got burned, so that's, so you trust your gut from that. And it's something that entrepreneurs, I think, I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, that's just how they learn really quickly. You just sometimes have to trust your gut, but it was one of those things that just helped me, rationalize it, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think we over rationalize too. Like, I built this thing to just leave it. And yes, because a lot of times the entrepreneurial spirit, that's what we're there to do. Mm-hmm. We're there to build it so that the next level can move on without us. We either sell the company, we have somebody take over for us, or we've built up enough awareness around whatever the thing was that it's now time for us to go build awareness somewhere else. And for most of it, it's not about the money. I mean, the money's great. Like, the money's lovely, but it's as much as we use it as a form of measurement. Most entrepreneurs could be doing something that would actually make them more money a lot of the times, but they're not, because there's some other thing that is a core to who they are that's driving them in that particular industry thing. It's the building of it, the understanding of it, the making a place for whatever it is, and the excitement behind that. So I had done that, and then I was like, oh, but that idea of, oh my God, I built this and all these people work for me, and my husband worked for me too. So it was like his income was now based on this. And what is he going to do? And I got all wrapped up in that. And later, he and I have had some conversation. And he's like, that's not your responsibility. I'm like, I know that in my head, but in my heart, there was still that, how could I do this to people? And he's like, it's my responsibility to deal with myself. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm taking that away from you. I should not be doing that either. So there's more learning always when you go through these moments of growth.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's when you look back, it's always the real challenging times where you grow from, but boy, when you're going through them, they're just challenging. They're just hard,
the dark night of the soul, as they like to call it. There's a reason for that. But the other side, when you get it, whatever it is that you were supposed to get and understand and receive, it's like, oh, okay. Gosh, I made that harder than it needed to be. So much harder sometimes.
Yeah, always. And so the hindsight is 2020. But it's, the funny thing is, it's like, I guess until maybe you sell or you exit or something in a specific business, and it's only in the context of that business, you're always like, you can look backwards and go, oh, I get that. But you're in the middle of the next challenge, the next mountain, the next, that never ends. Like, there's always the next one. Right. So.
No, we're calling that in now. We need it. I mean, I think our whole life experience is supposed to be, are we choosing to grow? Or are we choosing to atrophy? I don't think there's no in between. Yeah,
I agree. I don't think, I know myself. I would not make a very good retired guy.
No, I'm not
like,
employable, and I wouldn't make a good retired person.
It's like, that's the sort of the catch-22 is, it's like, I'll always have to find my own thing to do, but that's okay. That's part of what's fun. Right. So
agreed.
So I want to talk a little bit about like what do you actually do now? Like you sort of switched over. Tell me a little bit about, what you do now, like who you help, how you do it, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm a sales conversion coach. So I guide businesses that have high ticket offers. I mean, I can really help anyone, but it's the high ticket offer businesses that I really love working with. Mm-hmm. They have like a $3,000 to a $25,000 offer is pretty much where my sweet spot is, that they're selling online pretty much. And they really want to up their conversions rates. Most people should have a conversion rate of 50% or more. They get to closer to 75%. They're not charging enough. So you shouldn't have 100% because that means you're not pushing the envelope enough. But really like a 50%, like 1 out of every 2 people that come onto a conversation with you really should be at a point where they want to close to the other side. But I do it in a way that you shouldn't feel pushy while you're doing none of that like bro kind of sales and none of that energy. But you want it to feel fluid and easy. Doesn't mean it doesn't feel hard sometimes, but it should flow in a way that you're not feeling like you're pushing or staying out of alignment with who you are. So it's those small business owners that are at that 300,000 to 1.5 million is again another sweet spot for me. If you're at that higher level, you're probably looking to hire a team, which I can help people do too. But most of the time, they think they need to hire a team. They themselves think they're terrible salespeople when they're not. They're just trying to do it the way they were taught, not necessarily the way that flows for them. So I also look at the psychology behind why they're stuck, what's going on for them independently, and help them get to that. But your conversion rates really, 40, 50, 60% is really where most of us should be seeing if we're doing it the way that works best for us. If you're lower than that, then something else is wrong somewhere, and we got to figure out what that is. If you're higher than that, we got to talk about pricing.
Yeah, I do remember back in my agency days, that was our benchmark was we should lose 30% of our contracts. Otherwise, we're not charging enough. And every once in a while, they'd be like, we just landed how many in a row? Let's rethink a little bit of this, because that was always part of it. It's not the whole thing, but there's always part of it was pricing, of course. And I imagine the actual like lead qualification or the positioning or anything like that is a big part of it. But because if you're talking to the wrong people, you're not going to sell, right?
But what I see a lot of people, salespeople will say to me is, oh, the leads are crap, right? Like, if you've ever seen Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, their leads were terrible. But, this whole closers, coffee is for closers and blah, blah, blah. It shouldn't feel like that, right? But I see a lot of sales teams who are telling me the leads are terrible, and it's because they're not willing to ask the questions. They're overselling. They're not getting aligned with the person they're talking to. So it's actually not the leads a lot of the time. So even with clients that I work with, sometimes I'll jump onto their sales teams and I'll sell during a cycle to see what the real quality is coming in. And then I'll end up selling it at like a 60 or 70% close rate, and their team is at like 11. Something's not right here. It's not that I just have mad skills. I have mad skills, but it's because I also, and a lot of times I don't even understand their offer completely as I'm going into it the way they do, because I haven't been selling it forever, but I'm not emotionally attached to the outcome of what's happening the way they are. I'm asking more questions than I'm talking. I'm totally not in there with commission breath. So a lot of the things that drive the salespeople to get stuck on the wrong thing is why they're not enrolling. But yes, if we're in there and I'm still seeing we can't get you above a certain amount, let's go back and look at how you're positioning this. How is somebody coming into this conversation? There's one team that I've sold for. A lot of the women on the sales team were complaining, because they were all women. So it wasn't just the women. It was only women. They were complaining because they were saying, well, these people keep showing up on these sales calls because they just want free coaching. And I'm like, well, how are you positioning this call? Because I'm not seeing that when I take calls. How are you positioning it from the first word that comes out of your mouth? Or how are you positioning? Because they got leads assigned to them. What are the conversations you're even having with these people to get on your calendar? What are they thinking? Like, how are you getting them into the call? And a lot of times it's because they were trying to drag people into the call so much, they were kind of opening themselves up to, don't worry, we'll just have a conversation and we'll help you with your business. I'm like, you're setting them up to think that's what the call is for. Right? So not only were their conversions terrible, they were spending way more time on way more calls than I even was. I was taking fewer calls and making more money for the company too. Right? Like if I had 10 calls, I'd be in closing 6 or 7. They would have 30 calls and they'd be closing 6 or 7. And I'm like, but I would be, at a higher amount because there was, you can upsell things and I would always upsell in it. So it was a really different conversation coming into it. Is it really the lead is the problem? Is it the way you're framing the call? Is it the way you start the call? What do you think your job is? And a lot of them thought their job was to convince somebody to get on the call and then try and convince them to a yes. I'm like, none of that is true. Yeah. Your goal is to find the ones who are the right ones, get them to the call, make clear what that call is about, and then get them to a clear answer, whether it's a yes or a no. Not to take their credit card. Yes, let's get the credit card when they're a yes, but let's first find clarity around that. And a lot of them, it spun them pretty quickly from a 10 or 11% conversion rate up to 40, 50, 60%.
Oh, nice.
Which small business, I mean, that's 1 out of every 10 to 5, 6, or 7 out of every 10. That's huge change. And then when we tweak some of the leads and some of that, it goes bonkers. And the amount of, net revenue, pocketed revenue changes as well.
Yeah. I always found the most powerful sales tactic is just ask questions. That's it. Like one of the fallbacks is just ask questions and learn and learn and learn. And, if you focus on solving a problem, that seems to be a good place to start. Right. So.
Yeah. But understanding where the problem is and the questions, the curiosity space, you can position yourself as, Curious George in that moment, and you're just asking questions. If you're open, they'll tell you without realizing they're telling you exactly what the problem is. But I don't even mean what they say the problem is underneath that. There's usually something that's going on underneath that is actually creating a bigger issue. And if you're aware and present for it, that is the bridge to the yes. And they will find the money. Whenever people are like, oh, everybody's broke, nobody has any money, I'm like, how am I then getting money from the same pocket of people, right? Like, it's not that they're broke, it's they don't see the value in it. Some people are legit, there is not money for what it is that they didn't see the number coming, they were shocked. Yes. But that percentage is a lot smaller than most people think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of know it, like, going back to my agency days, like a lot of times the deals we got, it was because oftentimes it was from pressure from above. That was a lot of times there was some sort of pressure. And if you found out sort of where that was, and you're like, oh, this is why they care. This is how we help them, because it's not just this artifact. You're actually helping them, in a much larger sense. Right. And it's, and those things and that's how you get to that through building relationships and talking, right. And asking questions. So.
Well, I mean, every buyer is actually buying from an emotional underlying driver. They think they're buying from a logical driver. They're using their logic to justify what the emotional driver is. But if you can connect to that emotional driver, and it doesn't have to be them sobbing on the call, sometimes it is, but if you can connect what the emotional driver is, and like the case you were just saying, if the emotional driver is, I want my boss to be proud of me and excited because I want to keep my job because everybody else around me might be losing their jobs, that's an emotional driver. That's not a logical driver. Right? So you really have to start understanding what's truly pushing them to make a decision. And are you the right solution to get them there? And if the answer is yes, there really should be no other reason for them to say no. But most of the time people don't get to that thing. And then they're doing objection handling at the end, which if you're in an objection handle stage at the end, you missed something way earlier in the conversation.
Yeah. So Kirstin, how do people get in touch with you if they want to, like, and just maybe if you can just repeat again, like, who are the right people to talk with? I know you kind of went over it a little bit, but who should be contacting you, and how do they get hold of you?
Yeah. So business owners or people that are on a team where they're running the sales team, right? So if you're running the sales team or you're the business owner, that you really want to increase your conversion rates, and you want some help either doing it yourself or you want help building a team or dealing with a team that you currently have, I'm the one. I am the go-to girl. So if you want to go to my website, you can just go to evolveminded.com. On there, and these are all business owners, so it's my lead magnet. Of course, you guys know what this is, right? I wouldn't say that in any other place, but it's a free report basically that's going to give you the 7 biggest sales mistakes I'm seeing happening right now that are costing high ticket clients for people without them getting more people to come to their calls. Actually, the issues they're having with the ones that they're actually talking to, and then how to fix them. And we'll do the exchange. You give me your email address, I will give you this free report. You know how it works. And they can get that off the website too. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm not a huge fan of IG or dancing on TikTok or any of those things these days. So if you really want to see what I'm up to, LinkedIn's the best place to find me.
That's terrific, Kirstin, and I'll make sure that the links to your website, to your LinkedIn profile are in the show notes. Definitely go download that guide. I'll download it myself. I always love to have more. You can never know enough And I'm actually quite anxious to download that and read it myself. So I'm going to do that after the show. So you'll see my email address in there as well. But thanks again, Kirstin. This was really enjoyable, great conversation, and yeah, a lot of fun. And always, I'm always I love talking with people that I can, kind of pull out little bits of information from, to like learn myself, right? Some of the stuff that we talked about is just me being super curious. So
you're
really
good at this.
it.
Like you're a lot of fun to be interviewed by because you're chill, relaxed, but you're curious in this space where I don't feel like you're also trying to trip me up on something. I've been on those podcasts too, where I feel like they're trying to like catch some weird answer that I'm like, so you are fantastic. So I appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm just, honestly, for me, it's like having a conversation with another entrepreneur, and I just finally started recording them to share it with other people because they seem to like it as well. So, but yeah, thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. And for all of you out there, if you are a CFO, especially, or on a finance team, if you're struggling to understand where your business is headed, come and talk with us at Dryrun Financial Modeling Software, especially if you're trying to tackle cash flow, or even if you're trying to model things out like the tariffs and the effect that you're going to have on your sales and your business and your profit. We're really good at that stuff. So please come and see us at dryrun.com.